This is TWiT.
Zoom rushed out another Zoom bombing mitigation. Until these 3 Zoom desktop clients were updated for Linux, Mac, and Windows, they were prominently and originally conveniently, probably, displaying the current Zoom meeting ID in each app's title bar. This behavior, which had presumably caused no trouble at all during Zoom's first 9 years of life since its birth back in 2011, had suddenly become a significant liability as new Zoomers were sharing screenshots of their Zoom meetings on social media without stopping to consider that their meeting ID was also being shared because the screenshot contained the title bar. So, whoops, as we just talked about last week, there were some problems, some fundamental problems with Zoom, but a lot of the problems ended up just being a manifestation of the insane overnight popularity of Zoom. Things that, suddenly when everyone started using it and hadn't had a lot of experience using it, they were doing things that they shouldn't have been doing. So there was an across-the-board update. The meeting ID has been removed from the title bar and placed into a drop-down panel for the session's info icon, which is in the top left of each Zoom app. So there's just a little eye circled thing. You click on it and, you can get the meeting ID from there, which in a mature app is probably where it should be, since we now know that just the Zoom ID itself can be abused. Additionally, they've made the management and presumably the need for security-related settings more obvious to a meeting's hosts. Last week's update also added a new dedicated security icon to the app's control panel, where the meeting organizer can manage all security-related settings from a single location rather than, as they were previously, having them scattered all over the place and they had to bounce around among separate dialogues in order to find them all. So these new settings include all the things we talked about last week: the ability to lock meetings, to enable the waiting room, and more. And they added another feature. Meeting hosts are now able to enable meeting rooms on the fly, even if the feature was turned off before the start of the meeting, which hadn't been possible before. You had to that had to be set up in the original configuration of the meeting before it was started. That they fixed, and it'll also be less often needed since the update now also enables waiting rooms by default for all new meetings. And it also mandates that all new conferences be password protected. So again, I probably sounded a little upbeat about the speed with which they were, Zoom was addressing these problems, and I continue feeling that they are being very responsible. It went mainstream and lost its innocence pretty quickly. And predictably, speaking of losing its innocence, last Tuesday, one of the company's shareholders, a Michael Drew, filed a class action lawsuit on behalf of all other shareholders. The suit alleges that Zoom made, quote, materially false and misleading statements, unquote, that overstated its privacy and security measures, that it engaged in deception when it claimed that its product supported end-to-end encryption. Well, it does in some cases, but as we know, not with the strength that we're used to. And also alleges that Zoom only uses encryption for the transport link, allowing the service to still access user data and putting users, quote, at an increased risk of having their personal information accessed by unauthorized parties, including Facebook, unquote. So, yeah, this is going to happen, and who knows how this will settle out, but, it will. Meanwhile, Zoom has enlisted the aid of someone who's moderately famous, and that's Alex Stamos. They reached out to Alex, who previously worked at Facebook and before that at Yahoo as their, he's not their, he worked there, Facebook and Yahoo, as the CISO, their Chief Information Security Officer. And as we know, Alex departed Facebook 2 years ago, back in 2018, in protest over Facebook's handling of data security practices surrounding the Cambridge Analytica fiasco and Russian interference in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Alex had his eye on Facebook's Russian activity since around the summer of 2016 and wanted the company to go public with his findings, but Facebook's top execs, including Zuck, refused to allow that to happen. So he said, I think this is not where I want to be. He's now very busy being an adjunct professor at Stanford's Freeman Spogli Institute and a visiting scholar at the Hoover Institution. And in a posting of his on Medium last Wednesday, he said he felt compelled to assist Zoom even though he's consumed by other commitments. I really liked what Alex wrote, and we've got time, so I wanted to share it with our listeners. He said on his posting on Medium, last week, after I posted a series of tweets discussing the security challenges for Zoom and how they could respond, I got a phone call from Eric Yuan, Zoom's founder and CEO. We talked about the significant challenges his company was facing, both in responding to an incredible growth in users, but also living up to the security expectations of the moment. He asked detailed and thoughtful questions of my experiences working at companies facing extreme crises, and I was impressed by his clear vision for Zoom as a trusted platform and his willingness to take aggressive action to get there. He asked if I would be interested in helping Zoom build up its security, privacy, and safety capabilities as an outside consultant, and I readily agreed. Alex said, to be clear, I'm not an employee or an executive of Zoom, and I don't speak for the company. I've refrained from any public comment on Zoom or discussions with journalists since my call with Eric. But in the interest of transparency, I think it's important to disclose this work. I don't do a lot of consulting these days. I'm generally quite busy with my role at Stanford, and I'm proud of the work that team has been doing during this critical time for disinformation. This opportunity to consult with Zoom was too interesting to pass up, however, and I thought I would explain why I have embraced this challenge. First off, Zoom has gone from being a successful mid-size enterprise IT company to a critical part of the lives of hundreds of millions in the space of a few months. As my CV might suggest, I am attracted to difficult problems, and this creates some doozies. As someone who has walked through the galaxy of blinking lights and deafening whir of tens of thousands of servers carrying the sessions of millions of users, I appreciate the effort it takes to build a product that scales. To successfully scale a video-heavy platform to such size with no appreciable downtime in the space of weeks is literally unprecedented in the history of the internet. It has been clear to many people who have worked on production-scale systems that something special has been happening at Zoom, and the related security challenges are fascinating. It's not just the technical challenges that I am interested in. In a time of global crisis, Zoom has become a critical link between coworkers, family, friends, and most importantly, between teachers and students. The morning Eric called me, he said, and most mornings since, there were 5 simultaneous Zoom sessions emerging from my home as my 3 kids recited the Pledge of Allegiance in their virtual morning assembly. My wife supported her middle school students, and I participated in a morning stand-up with my Stanford colleagues. Like many techies, I've used Zoom professionally for a while, but I admit that there was still a bit of culture shock as my wife taped a daily calendar full of Zoom meeting codes to our 8-year-old daughter's desk. The adaptation of a successful enterprise collaboration tool into virtual classrooms, virtual doctor's offices, and a myriad of other applications, including at least one virtual cabinet room, has created privacy, trust, and security challenges that no company has ever faced. As I told the computer science students in my Trust and Safety Engineering course this last quarter, the last 2 weeks of which were taught over, yes, Zoom, coding flaws and cryptographic issues are important, but the vast majority of real technological harm to individuals comes from people using products in a technically correct but harmful manner. Zoom has some important work to do in core application security, cryptographic design, and infrastructure security. And I'm looking forward to working with Zoom's engineering teams on those projects. And he finishes saying, still, I'm certain that the real challenge, one faced by every company, trying to provide for the diverse needs of millions seeking low-friction collaboration, is how to empower one's customers without empowering those who wish to abuse them. I encourage the entire industry to use this moment to reflect on their own security practices and have honest conversations about things we could all be doing better. This is possibly the most impactful challenge faced by the tech industry in the age of COVID-19, and together we can make something positive out of these difficult times and ensure that communications are safer and more secure for all. So anyway, I thought that was a great piece of communication, and I think it really nicely sort of frames where Zoom is. And again, I'm impressed with the idea that Eric, the Zoom CEO, would proactively reach out to Alex and say, "Hey, you've been in the middle of this before. Would you be willing to give us a hand?" And following up on that, last Wednesday, the day before Alex Stamos's blog posting on Medium, Zoom's CEO, Eric Yuan, also announced that Zoom had formed a CISO council and an advisory board to collaborate and share ideas regarding how to address the Zoom's current security and privacy issues. In his announcement, he wrote, "I'm truly humbled that in less than a week after announcing our 90-day plan, some of the most well-respected CISOs in the world have offered us their time and services. This includes CISOs from VMware, Netflix, Uber, Electronic Arts, HSBC, NTT Data, Procore, and Ellie Mae." He said the purpose of the CISO Council will be to engage with us in ongoing dialogue about privacy, security, and technology issues and best practices to share ideas and collaborate. So anyway, I think these are all good moves. As I noted last week, no one has yet taken a deep look into their crypto, and someone needs to. What we've seen is that their ECM, their electronic codebook mode of crypto, is almost certainly leaking repeating patterns from plain text, and that suggests that it really needs a closer look. If they've more deeply rolled their own crypto solutions, and if Zoom is headed toward becoming the world's teleconferencing platform of choice, then one thing Zoom's CEO ought to do, and perhaps Alex or one of the CISOs will recommend that if they haven't already, would be to open their system to an independent security audit. There will be, there were a number of stories last week about major companies already preemptively banning all use of Zoom just as a result of the bad press that happened, SpaceX and Google among them. I understand the emotional reaction to the initial security troubles, but most of the headline making was, as we said at the time, from high-profile Zoom bombing, which was mostly the result of lax security measures on the part of the conference organizer. Just this was all new to everybody, to hundreds of millions of users at least, due to the massive rapid uptake of Zoom. And it was probably a lot of people's first experience using the platform. So it should surprise no one that some mistakes were made. And to Zoom's credit, they've already fixed all of those defaults and done everything they can to shore things up. But I think an independent security audit is probably now one of the many things that Zoom needs. But I'm impressed by what I've continued to see. I think they've continued to make a lot of the right moves.